Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again at LeadSpace. Today we have a treat for you. We have Cameron Poor, our solutions architect, joining me, and we are going to be discussing identity resolution, how to profile the right prospects for sales and marketing. I'm Felix Serna. I'm the VP of Marketing at LeadSpace. I had been with the company for a year and a half now, and I have 20 years of experience in sales and marketing, in digital demand generation, and MarTech technology. With me is Cameron Poor, solutions architect. Cameron,
Yeah,
um, here I'm calling in from San Jose this morning. Cameron is in Atlanta. Do you want to say something about your tenure at LeadSpace and your experience, Cameron?
yeah, absolutely. So like Felix said, I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Been with LeadSpace for 5 years now. I actually started as an SDR, spent some time as a solution engineer, and right now I'm our solution architect.
Very cool. Thank you. So we are going to start with this session. Just a reminder: we have a couple of assets, a couple of pieces of content that are very relevant to our discussion today. We have building B2B buyer profiles guide, and we also have a Forrester B2B CDP wave that was just released in last quarter, and we'll talk about a little bit about it during this webinar. But you can get the real thing by clicking on the assets that accompany the talk. Okay, so the agenda for today, we have roughly 30 minutes, and we're going to be discussing identity resolution. What is it? Why it's so important? Then Cameron is going to talk about use cases and customer stories, and he'll talk about how to set up an identity resolution framework. Then we'll show you briefly how LeadSpace can help, and we'll hopefully leave some time for Q&A at the end. So what is identity resolution? It's literally finding who your prospects are, what company they work for, in what role, and how they're placed within the buying team. It's important to know if they're prospects, customers, or partners. And these are people that we'll see in a second come in through digital channels and other channels. So identity resolution used to be called, when I started in this industry, and now I'm dating myself as compared to Cameron here. When I started working with identity resolution, it was called householding. This is 20 years ago, and the companies doing it were companies like Axiom Data or Dun& Bradstreet. And what they were doing was getting consumers associated with a particular house. So under one roof, you had, the family, the members of the family, the different buying and purchasing behaviors and personas within that marketers were target within that house. That was householding. With the advent of digital selling for B2B, we started looking at identity resolution in the B2B framework, which is all about finding the people that you need to find in your prospect accounts and finding their roles so you can create what it's called buying teams and target them with relevant content. So why is important? Because sometimes, not all the times, but in a very large proportion, you're getting perfect inbound data through your digital channels. Sometimes you are missing a corporate email address that you can associate with a company, or you are missing the country, or you have wrong demographic data. And then that contact that you gain through either a sign up, an event, a partner list, now becomes really an unusable piece of information and data that is frustrating for marketers. And you need to be able to solve those issues. Also, when creating demand generation, sales, and marketing strategies, you are always trying to be the most relevant possible with your prospects. How do you do that? Well, knowing who they are. It's a good beginning, right? If you know their profile, not just their title, but really what they do in the company, what are they passionate about, even, you are going to be able to create relevant content that can target their interest, raise their interest, and put you into consideration in their purchasing process, in their acquisition process. So it's really the cornerstone for relevant personalization. And then on top of that, when you have an advanced demand generation setup and you're using models, you're using AI, machine learning to try to um, be more targeted, more focused on your use of resources, you want to be able to prioritize them, and you prioritize them, those follow-ups, those next actions, by knowing who you're targeting and how are they important within your prospect organization. A key example would be translating an amount of digital people or people that have come through digital channels, and trying to figure out who you're going to call tomorrow. If you only have capacity to call 20 people during the next 2 hours tomorrow, who are those people? How do you prioritize that based on their roles, their personas, not just their actions with the company? Okay. So today, Cameron will unravel case studies on real-time unification and identity resolution, how we do that at LeadSpace. As I mentioned before, one of the assets that you can download today from this site, or if you're watching it recorded, also from BrightTalk, is this Forrester new B2B customer data platform wave report. This was released in Q4 of 2023, literally at the beginning of the year here, and it's very relevant to this topic. Why? Because when Forrester put the 3 top characteristics of performance for B2B CDPs, number 1 was real-time data unification and identity resolution. Number 2, support for buying groups, which, to the conversation that we were just having, it's supported by identity resolution. And number 3 is AI for Insights journey mapping and next-best action, which is supported on buying groups and identity resolution. So the way I see it, structurally and logically, if you want to do 1, 2, 3, you need 1, 2, 3 on top. They build on top of each other. And the foundation here is data unification and identity resolution. As I said, check out the report. And I'm speaking too much, and Cameron is too quiet. So, Cameron, please take it on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll kick things off digging into some of the common challenges and ultimately the business impact when you're trying to solve this problem of identity resolution. So one common situation you're going to run into is inbound leads having personal email addresses. That builds up over time, and we're all very familiar with what a database looks like when you start having rough, incomplete data show up. One, without having a unique identifier in place, you're going to start to have duplicates pile up. And if you're not doing ongoing maintenance, if you're not keeping your database clean over time using some kind of tool, some kind of solution, eventually you get to the point where you just have to wipe the thing out and rebuild it every couple of years. And everyone's been in an organization where that's had to happen, and it's a pain, to say the least. So a lot goes into that, and a lot of those challenges are in place, and we're all familiar with them. But what's the impact of that? One, long lead to response times. If you've got my personal experience as an SDR, if I manage to have a lead slip through the cracks there, and I need to figure out, well, who is this person? Do I need to go and pause everything I'm doing, look them up on LinkedIn, try to understand, is this person worth reaching out to or not? Maybe it's just a white paper download and they gave a personal email address, and without any type of solution in place, that lead's just not actionable in the slightest. So downstream from that, then you've got your missed sales opportunities. And that's, we all know how that goes. And then wasted demand gen efforts and spend. If you've got a cluttered database and you are reaching out to people that maybe aren't even at that company anymore, or you're trying to reach out to folks that maybe you have aligned with the wrong company that you thought belonged to this one company and instead actually work at a totally separate company, then you could have issues with personalization, with the way that you're segmenting, and overall you get a poor customer experience with that, particularly when you poor prospect experience, but also a poor customer experience if you're accidentally sending sales and marketing outreach to existing customers that are wondering, why am I getting this? I already bought your product. It's a mess overall. It can be. So we're going to get into 3 customer stories here today. 2 of these 3, as a solution architect, I directly oversee these projects. Some of our more complex and more complicated customers and implementations, I'll usually have a hand in. But we'll talk through all of these in some detail, talk through some of the challenges that they faced, ultimately how our tools and how other tools as well can actually help solve these problems when all working together. And hopefully coming away from this, you'll have some ideas, maybe relate to some of these issues a bit within your own organizations. So the first one we're going to get into is talking more about that person-to-business profile matching. This is really focused in on that personal email situation. And they had a really special use case here. One of the largest hospitality providers in the world, they had a very large consumer-focused database. We're talking personal email address, sometimes first name, sometimes last name, no business data whatsoever. And they wanted to operationalize that for B2B purposes. So we'll spend some time talking about that. We'll also get into one of our other customers, the largest CRM provider. You probably know the name, but we'll keep it a secret for now. And we help them a lot with real-time lead to account matching. That's a huge issue. When you're looking at either stepping on the toes of sales reps, target account, a lead comes in from a target account and you've got this inside sales team and your SDR team reaching out potentially at the same time because they downloaded 2 white papers or filled out 2 forms. We've all had it happen, and no one likes to have to be the middleman to resolve issues like that. The third piece here, going beyond something like lead to account matching, we don't just have the ability to look at, hey, let's ingest your first party data out of your Salesforce instance, for example, and then let you know who the account owner is and all the other associated data. Are they being, are they in this ABM tier, et cetera? We can actually get a lot more complex than that, even really unique industry specific signals. Some really, really cool stuff we'll get into to make sure you've got it all served up in the right place, that data is living under one roof, so you can actually get some actionable insights and operationalize it at scale. So first, we'll dig into this hospitality leader. More likely than not, one of us has, I'm sure more than a few of us on this call have stayed at one of their hotels. But they came to us with this problem. Hey, we have millions of consumer records, B2C records, and we want to be able to operationalize them for some of our new B2B programs. You can't do that if you don't know what company they work for. You can't do that if you don't know what their job title is or anything about them other than their first name, last name, and personal email address. It becomes really hard to decide, does this person actually qualify for this program that we're launching? Are they within the ICP and the TAM for this particular product? There's just no way of knowing without resolving their identity. So what we brought to the table to help them is a global database of over 175 million personal emails. It's a big number. And we can understand why when we think about our own personal emails. I have 4, I think, that I've used over the years on and off. There's a lot of data sitting out there for a lot of people, and being able to stitch that together and make sense of it is a challenge for a lot of companies. And it's something that luckily we were able to roll out last year. It has been very well received in the market so far. With that comes full company matching and enrichment. So all the standard firmographics and third-party data, technographics you'd expect to come to the table with traditional enrichment providers, we're now able to do even with only a personal email address as the input. On top of that, and this will be really big news for any SDRs out there, I know it was always one of my favorite tricks that I would use, we can actually provide social enrichment. So almost a little over 3/4 of our database, we can bring back a LinkedIn profile for people. That can be great when we're looking at multi-pronged, multi-threaded approaches to reaching out to these folks. We all know email blasts, they have their purpose, but you really need to have a more personalized story that you're communicating with these different cadences that you're rolling out. And then it's accessibility to the data. This is something that we've got direct API access with the REST API. We've got it a number of native integrations with all the major systems out there when it comes to CRM, marketing automation, many data lakes. And we've even got direct at the form integrations as well. So very lightweight implementations, even for those folks that might have homebrew CRMs and things, or maybe not have the manpower to work with an API and try to get it integrated. You can actually just set this right on a form on your website and ensure that the enriched data flows directly into wherever it comes out of on the other end of that form. So value and benefits. Well, for one, lead to account matching rates boost by 25%. Of course, this is going to vary to some extent based on what industry you're in, based on what type of content you have, what type of folks you have showing up on your site in the first place, and especially whether you have gated web forms. And this is an interesting point, right? Because we don't want to reduce traffic, but we want to make sure that our forms are our leads that are coming in from our forms are actually able to be operationalized and actioned on. So this presents an interesting opportunity. Well, we don't have to choose between these two worlds of gated forms where we have to require, for example, a business email. A lot of people just don't want to fill that out. So imagine being able to lift that restriction. They can put in any email they want, and there's still a really good chance that we'll be able to determine, okay, should we reach out to this person? Should we actually bring them into our main database? Should we pass them on as an MQL? And then from a differentiation standpoint, one of the things that makes it, because there are providers out there that are able to do this personal email matching, but with everything else LeadSpace brings to the table, I'm confident that we are one of the best options out there. Fundamentally, that starts with a very flexible multi-source matching algorithm. So our source for personal email data, our sources actually for personal email data, are just one of around 30 that we have, ranging from everything from technographics, multiple sources for firmographics, multiple for demographics. And that's not just about getting the most coverage, it's also about getting the highest accuracy. Being able to look at confirming signals across these different sources, that makes a huge difference when it comes to being able to ensure we're bringing in as much data as possible, as accurately as possible. And of course, we do this all in real time because of our APIs, sub-second SLA. All right. So the second one we'll get into here is all about that lead to account matching. Now, this is a fairly straightforward process if we think about it conceptually. We've got our account data living in our CRM. We've got our inbound leads coming into our marketing automation. All we really need to do is figure out a way to connect the dots there. But then we enter the problem of the challenges of identity resolution, where maybe we don't have certain unique identifiers. They're a one-to-one match between our accounts and between these leads that are coming in. We might have situations where, again, they filled out a personal email address. And being able to do this, in an offline capacity where we're maybe doing daily updates to make these linkages, that works, but not if you're trying to get some of these more aggressive SLAs when it comes to lead to response time and speed to lead. We've even had customers that have a 30-second SLA on lead to response time, or on lead response time, and the drop off, if they miss that 30-second SLA, is immense in some cases. So getting this done right, being able to have, say, a company like LeadSpace ingest your account data, understand, is this a target account? Who owns this account? Should we notify the account owner instead of notifying our sales team or our SDR team or our ISR team? That puts the power in your hands to be able to make those decisions and ensure, again, nobody's stepping on each other's toes. Now, what this got for this CRM leader customer of ours, the net was we reduced their average time to route leads to sales from 30 minutes, which is what they were at before, in many cases having manual validation having to take place here, down to a matter of seconds. We were able to automate their enrichment further upstream without compromising accuracy. A lot of that, again, gets into that multi-source approach that we've got as far as confirming signals and coverage. And overall, what we saw from a metrics perspective, we had 75% coverage of their inbound leads, and believe me, they get a lot of inbound leads, these guys. And we saw after testing 97% accuracy on the data that made its way into the system in production. So really, really proud of that particular use case there. Now, the next we'll speak to, this is one that is a bit more complex. So I'm not going to dive too down into the weeds here. But at a high level, we've got a global fleet telematics leader. So we're talking, you've got a bunch of Penske trucks, and someone wants to know, well, where are these trucks? Are they being driven in a way that is safe? They want to have some means of tracking all the data and information around that. So these guys are selling a software like that. Well, that means they're going to want to know a few things that are a little bit different than the normal customer that might just be selling software or might be selling something along the lines of that. They're going to want to know stuff like, well, what's the fleet size of this particular company? Where are these different fleets located? This is a lot of data that you're not going to expect a common data provider, a DNB, a ZoomInfo, a LeadSpace to have. And what we're able to do because of our flexible architecture, because we actually natively blend all of these sources ourselves, we've built this unification engine that exists at the core of our platform. And we can actually put it to work for you in some really creative ways. For instance, you go out and you license a data provider like RigDig in particular is a great one for fleet size, or any number of these different custom data sources that you see laid out here on this diagram. And what we're able to do is bring those in, perform some custom pre-processing, things like controlling for just all sorts of different attributes that might need some adjusting, fine-tuning. We've got a team of engineers that's very capable, very, very good at making sure that we get in, we get out what we want to get out of unification. It then runs through that engine, that unification engine. What we get out of it, then we're able to split out into two things. We have one, a unified data set. So there's no more duplicates. We brought all this disparate data together. This one data source that had the fleet size, this one data source that was our CRM, our marketing database. We bring them all together and build relationships between all these different IDs. And you've got this one fully deduplicated master, basically. But then we also create a source data set out of that. So something like, for example, a large file that's got all your Salesforce account IDs individually. Now, maybe you've got duplicates in there, but of course, we need to be able to get this data back into that system. So we've got a one-by-one representation of all of those tied to those golden records we just created. Really, really cool process. And again, this is something that's extremely, extremely flexible. So if you're running into challenges with trying to understand, say, your total addressable market, trying to do territory planning, because you have so much data spread out across, whether it is just different data sources, like in this use case, or whether it is different distributed departments and organizations, different arms of your company that all sort of do their own things different ways. M&A activity, those of us that have worked at a company that's either been acquired or acquired others, it can be a serious pain trying to bring all that data together, get it under one roof, so you can actually figure out how to make the most of this new joint organization that you're now working with. So fundamentally, it all starts with applying the right identifiers. So on the person side, we're going to see stuff like your webmail, your work mail, social data, phone, etc. So then beyond that, we've got company identifiers. So you've got your domains, you've got your addresses, unique IDs, a DUNS number, for example. And we want to make sure that all these records are as populous as possible across the board for all these different attributes. From there, we can start really doing the magic. We can start bringing in all these firmographic values, demographic values, start layering on predictive scoring, intent scoring, whether it's first party or third party intent, persona scoring, understanding its scale. If we've got a company that, a company like us that wants to reach out to, folks that are maybe in marketing operations or demand generation, and we've got to make sense of job titles like growth hacker, cool name, but where does that fit into, what we might traditionally see as a director of demand gen or a director of marketing operations, et cetera? Trying to make sense of that at scale. Well, one, you've either got a list of hundreds of hundreds of attributes in a smart list in Marketo for those Marketo users out there, which is just a pain to manage and update. Or you use something like LeadSpace with a persona score that will actually look at all of the different attributes, all the job functions, skills, et cetera, and be able to say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 100, how close does this fit the type of person that we want to do this with? Whether it's this part of our product or this part or this part. Most of our customers have multiple personas in play. That same methodology goes into play for all of our scoring. But again, the takeaway here is that you really have to start with that identity resolution. That's the foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. So with that, I'll kick back over to you, Felix.
Thank you, Cameron. That was great to see those scenarios and the tremendous value that we are providing to these customers. And we are doing this for a lot of our customers. When when we refer to the Forrester piece, you can imagine, the importance of identity resolution and how we rate it high as a B2B provider. When you look at the industry, especially in high tech, 4 of the top enterprise software companies are our customers, the top networking company, the top analytics, the top identity and security, the top CRM, the top chip maker for B2B, and the top storage company. They're all in our shop. They trust our shop and people like Cameron to solve those issues for them. So the message that that I want to bring is that we really know the ideal buyer profile and how to pick your best customers and prospects, how to analyze your addressable market and prioritize your sales territories, how to prioritize your content and campaigns, and organize your demand funnel. I wanted to leave some time for questions, and we'll do that in a second. But I wanted to close with this offer that we have put together at LeadSpace. It's basically the idea that, and this is not a cheap kind of like discount or an offer to give you a little piece of content. It's really an offer to spend some quality time to understand the issues that you have on your around identity resolution in your current market platform. And our customers are very large corporations. 30 minutes is the less that we can do in terms of trying to understand the complexity of their problem. And then we'll provide a free evaluation of your data to demonstrate how we can add value with our solution. And it will be folks like Cameron, or maybe even Cameron, doing that session. So thank you so much for that. If you have any questions, you can forward them to either Cameron or myself directly. Here's our email. And let's see, there's a question here, Cameron. How hard is it to integrate intent into ID resolution?
So it's a good question. The way I would approach that is really thinking of it as 2 different stages in the process. When it comes to the identity resolution, that's something that really enables you to start activating things like intent. So that's the way that I would approach that. Think of identity resolution as the means of getting the appropriate data onto this record, figuring out where it fits into the puzzle of all the rest of our data from an operational standpoint. And then when we start bringing in intent, we can only really do that once we have established where this record fits into the big picture.
Right. It gives meaning to that intent signal, right? Within the context. It provides the context. Very, very cool. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for that question. If you have any other questions, again, please send us an email. Either Cameron or I will be really, really glad to answer them. Thank you for your time and attention this morning. This was a great session. Thank you, Cameron, for coming in and showing us the great work that you're doing for our customers. We'll see you soon. Thank you.